Most of us these days claim to be spiritual in some form, to some degree, whatever that means. And if that's you, you probably equally as identify or connect with the word sacred. Maybe the word sacred means even more for you, but essentially they kind of mean the same thing when you think about it. And if you are one of these people who uses the word spiritual and sacred in your day, I imagine a word that you do not use in your day, strangely enough, is the word holy. Isn't that interesting? Because obviously the word holy, meaning quite literally the same thing, is almost exclusively used by religion. Of course, referring to the Holy Bible, many other references within Christianity and other religions. And of course, spirituality, knowingly or not, prides itself on defining itself from religion, and so doesn't go near certain words, one of them being God, and two of them being holy, three of them being Jesus. But that's another video. But isn't it interesting that the word holy to truly mean simply sacred, simply blessed, simply your divine self? Well, divine self, we know that word, don't we? But we don't use that word. And I would just speak for a minute or two as to why we don't use that word, and why, equally, spirituality doesn't use the word God. Because the word holy, as different to spiritual, or even sacred, I guess, has a certain integrity to it, a certain weight to it, a certain accountability, let us say, a certain higher heart virtue about it, that while you may be spiritual, and all that that means to you, to live a life that is holy really does have a different feel, a different vibe about it than a life that is spiritual. And a life that is holy, whether you are locked up on the religious connotation or not, really does take you straight back to God. And this is where the accountability comes from. This is where the integrity comes from. Because to be spiritual within spirituality these days, we're talking about the universe. We're talking about the source of all that is. And I can tell you, if you haven't realised this already, it's much harder to be personally accountable to a benign thing called the universe. If you're with God, who incidentally, when you think about it, created the universe, so you might as well keep going. When you think about it, God is a personalised relationship. And within that, that is where our accountability truly comes from. That is where our integrity truly comes from, and our humility. Because all of those things are in recognition of a contextual understanding and source greater than ourselves that is personal. And I don't mean in the Christian sense that if you do wrong you get punished. It's nothing like that. But it is a personal relationship, and to recognise God as different to the universe is a very personalised, intimate relationship with our Creator, as different to what can be and usually is quite benign in the word universe. And so spiritual versus holy really is the same thing. The word holiness, whether you can allow God freedom outside of religion or not, really brings that accountability right back home to your heart and to your soul. Spiritual these days is a little overused and a little over referred to, and immensely grey in terms of what it refers to and what it can accommodate, what sort of characteristics and behaviours and so forth that it can accommodate. And it doesn't take much to just have a look at the spiritual circles these days of people that claim full spirituality, capital S, but really it doesn't take much to look at the feelings and the thoughts going on within those people and the subsequent behaviours to realise that they may be engaging in spiritual practices, but they are not what you would call spiritual by the definition of holy. And so it really can accommodate slightly more grey than true integrity would, and true spiritual integrity would. And I would bring your attention to the saying, holier than thou. And that's really the classic indication that we do recognise the word holy with a higher level of integrity, a deeper level of authenticity, because the saying holier than thou is more often than not used in referring to someone that for whatever reason we believe are better than us or acting better than us. When someone is behaving or acting holier than thou, it's projected as a tall poppy thing, as a bit of an ego thing. But let's just consider what we're really saying here. If we are to accuse someone of acting holier than thou, what are we talking about? Well, we're referring to their values, their virtues, their principles, their beliefs, all of that sort of thing, being of a high level of credibility, of a high level of integrity, that their word means something, their beliefs mean something, that they have a sense of right and wrong and integrity around those things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think you'll find that quite often people who are not being judgmental and are not projecting those standards and ideals onto others, but are merely upholding them for themselves and adhering to them themselves, will still attract as much attention from people and criticism from people calling them holier than thou, even without the judgment going on, because we simply don't like to see people behaving in alignment with what we would truly classify as holiness, because it is a light and it shows up our unholiness, it shows up our unspiritual stuff. And when we find someone who is quite anchored and quite clear and spend enough time around that person, more often than not, you'll find that your shit will come up. Because holiness is a light, and holiness is the light that we are, which is not of this world. To connect to holiness and our truly sacred divine self is to bring a component of heaven to earth, to bring a component of our soul to a place that does not have that. And trust me, if you're doing it well enough, people will notice, either consciously or unconsciously. You don't find that too much around spiritual people. And in fairness, of course, with the almost sole reference to religion around the word holiness, you don't really find too many people in religion doing the same thing either. Like, religious people may claim the word holy a little more, but at the end of the day, the fruits of behaviour aren't really aligned all that much more necessarily. Hypocrisy abounds, inconsistency abounds, laziness abounds. Spirituality and religion are no different in that sense. But the word that we use to guide ourselves, the word that we use to frame our way of being in the world, if we are to describe our nature, if we are to refer to how to be in this world, we may use spiritual, we may use virtuous, we may use a range of words as a benchmark, as a bit of a guide stick, something to live up to, something to move towards and behave towards, as a form of just doing okay in your day, as a form of just getting on well with people and finding peace in the world. There's no point in having a really high, virtuous kind of judgment set all over people if it's only going to isolate you and make you unhappy. The idea of holiness, as much as sacredness and recognising one's own divinity, is to find the peace and the connection with others through that higher heart. It is not meant to be an isolating experience. Your holiness and your sacredness is not meant to remove you from people. It is to enable more of those things and acceptance of more of those things by recognising the sacred in all, by recognising holiness and what holiness truly means for our heart. When we can stop thinking about that word and associating that word with other things for a moment and really just stop and close our eyes and feel the word holy and what that word means. It might come with some prickles and some funny associations for you, but if you are really honest and can take a moment, I would encourage you just to sit and really just uncork that word and just let it breathe for a minute or two and really just feel the word. Give the word a bit of honour just for a moment And anything that does come up for you that you find that is dishonouring the word or is devaluing the word, I think you'll find that in a bit of reflection, you'll find that you've got a problem with religion, that you don't actually have a problem with the word, and that the word itself is purity. You can't really have a problem with that unless you find that it is a benchmark that you're not living up to, and out of jealousy you're angry with it. But that's a bit different, you know. Anyway, I just wanted to bring the word holy to you today and bring some holiness into your awareness for this day. Holiness of our divine self and our higher self, capital S, the divine self that we are, the holiness of God and our connection, each and every one of us, to the Creator that is the living source. God bless us. God bless our holiness expressed in this day. Amen.